Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry we had a technical glitch. I think by mistake, instead of going live, I just ended the stream. So I'm so sorry about this delay in the session. But if you're still around, I would like to hear from you and your comments. In case you are not, that means I have sent you this recording and you will be able to have a look at what we are doing. So today I'm going to talk about, as I mentioned, elevating your executive presence, how to bridge the gap between a functional expert and a strategic leader. Now, starting the session, uh, sorry, starting the session just like a James Bond movie with a bang, let me just share with you a couple of statistics which are really key to what we are about to do here. And that is the first one is that there is a research which tells us that 83% of the executives, they believe that executive presence is more important than technical expertise for people or leaders to advance in their career, to grow into the strategic roles. And the second part, once again, and it is concerning that almost two-thirds of leaders they hit a glass ceiling because of communication gaps, because of executive presence when they reach the peak of their functional expertise. Now, I think that sets the context completely for what we are about to do in this session is to look at what are some of the reasons why does this happen and what is it that we can do to address this uh, this gap or this phenomena. Okay, so yep, let me just have a look at this one. So a little bit about myself. They say that when you are teaching maths to Ramu, not only should you know maths, but you should also know Ramu. So, well, here I am, your Ramu. So uh, you can have a look at what exactly are we. Yeah, this is about me. I've had about 20,000 professionals that I have worked with in the past 20 years. I have had the honor of working for more than 1,000 hours one-on-one coaching sessions with leaders, and I have worked with about 30 plus C-suite leaders. These are some of the organizations that I have done work with in the past 20 years, and I continue to work with few of them at the same time right now. And besides that, in the last uh, few months, I have actually been uh, in sessions with uh, almost 120 people um in one-on-one sessions. Now, this is because I've been working with the corporate organizations for almost one. And when I started receiving requests from people who wanted to work with me one-on-one, I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to explore and see how can we create a product that will be relevant and important for leaders, who are reaching out on one-on-one. So that's when I started to open my calendar, schedule with these leaders. And what I have discovered is something that I want to share with you today about what are pain points and how to address them. So to start the session, I would like to ask you to look at, just reflect, think about your recent high stakes meeting where you felt that your message was not landing properly with your stakeholders. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about it and make a note of that, what exactly comes to your mind. And if you're, kind of happy enough to share it, I would like to see the comments coming in here. So maybe you would like to put it in the comment. So go ahead. Okay. Now, this is what I have discovered while working with professionals. These were some of the things that came out, and they were talking about it, that they're not able to connect with their stakeholders in a meaningful way. Sometimes they find that they know exactly what they want to say, but they're not able to articulate it well. And because of that, sometimes even when they are talking, they have something relevant and critical to share with them, they feel that they are being ignored. Not having anything to say in the meeting. Many a times leaders, they feel that, what am I doing in these meetings? What is it that I can add value to? And they just keep quiet, and that again works against them, right? So not able to get the attention of people even while making critical presentation. They've got something relevant to say, but they're not able to get the attention of people. People don't um, they don't give attention to them, right? And sometimes leaders, they have mentioned that, although I know it is important for me to ask questions during these sessions, not only for me to be able to understand exactly what's happening in the other parts of the organization, but at the same time, for me to create visibility, then it's important for me to be able to at least ask questions. But then what happens is, I'm not able to find any way, or I really don't know what sort of questions to ask, right? So how come my peers are able to do it and I'm not able to articulate myself clearly? So these are few things that have come up again and again from leaders that I have spoken in the past. So we are going to have a look at exactly why does this happen, and I'm going to look at three critical dimensions of executive presence. Many leaders, they have not been able to find out exactly why. Okay, I can see Aman is asking me a question here, and he says, oh, let me just look at this. Yeah, so Aman asked me a question. He says, not able to ask questions or communicate with limited knowledge around the subjects. Here, absolutely. Thank you, Aman. So this is something that we are, we many leaders, they feel the same way, that this is what is happening. So what exactly can you do? How can you look at these three critical dimensions? What are the four immediately applicable tools or frameworks that you can take away from today's session? And what is it? I'm also going to share with you a framework to be able to command attention in a room, whether you have C-suite leaders or any other different leaders. Let me see if I can just open it, because yeah, I think it's not very clearly visible. Let me remove that one also. So at the end, I'm also going to share with you exactly how to systematically develop these skills if you are looking to seriously work on those skills. Excuse me. Okay. So in our session today, we are going to have a look at the executive presence challenge. What exactly is the challenge? Why do we even need to look at it? And at the same time, what is the three components? There are three key components of executive presence. I'm going to share that with you. Strategic application techniques. There are certain techniques that you can start to immediately use to come across as a strategic communication. The second one is your questions. We will look at an implementation framework. We are going to look at and the next steps if you have any. Okay, I can see Venkat has asked me a question. So let me just look at that. Yes, not able to clearly communicate at the beginning to keep attention of the absolutely 100%. So this is something we face, and this is something that we're going to talk about soon, Venkat. So moving on, here is the key thing. This is something that we have found out, that technical expertise is not necessarily sufficient for you to grow in your career. And we have seen this trend that as people move from a functional role and they start to reach a level where they are ready to move into the strategic role, 2/3 of the leaders, they hit the glass ceiling. They are not able to kind of break that ceiling. And sometimes it's difficult for us to understand exactly why it's happening, because uh, we have been rewarded, we have been uh, kind of we have grown into our career doing what we do as a functional leader. But the difference here is that when you start off as a technical professional, the changes as you grow into your role, they are incremental. Initially, you start off as an individual contributor, you manage a small team slowly, and then it grows to a larger team. Uh, but when it comes to a strategic transition is concerned, this is a completely dramatic change in the way expectations, your stakeholders expectation change, the way you communicate or how you are expected to communicate, that completely changes. And that is the reason we find that technical professionals, even when they have brilliant ideas, they get sidelined, not because of a lack of technical expertise, but because they fail to talk in a language which resonates with the leaders in the C-suite, right? So this is what is at stake. It's not only your individual career that gets impacted, but at a larger organizational level, you are not able to impact simply because we miss out on the opportunities for our team, and we miss out on the opportunities of putting our expertise uh, at uh, at work, so that the organization can benefit from your 15-20 years of experience and what you have learned and what is your perspective that can help the organization move forward. Okay, so it's a double-edged sword. You lose out on your own career advancement, and at the same time organization loses out because they are not able to tap into your expertise. So this is one example that I can share with you. Unfortunately, because of the kind of work that we do with one-on-one leaders, it's not possible for me to share their identities or even their photographs. I've tried to kind of blur it, and I hope that this will work. But what I'm trying to say here, or what am I trying to communicate here, is that we have uh, uh, we have had leaders, and particularly this leader, I will call him Deepak. That Deepak used to stay quiet in the meetings, but once he started to understand these dynamics, and with the help of coaching, he started to ask the right insightful questions, then sharing information instead of insights. He used to be quite detailed in the way that he used to explain things, but when he understood exactly how leaders expect him to communicate, he's changed using certain frameworks and became much more sharper in the way that he was communicating with his leaders. And because of that, what has happened is that initially he used to get ignored, but then later on, slowly he got invited. He created a place for himself where he would be asked before critical decisions were made, which had inputs of his technical domain that was important. So that was a big shift which he experienced. Okay. So how exactly did he do that? What exactly happened? How was he able to make that change? I'm going to use that as an example for us to look at what is the strategic shift that Deepak was able to make to become more strategic in his perspective and in his communication as we went through this exercise. So this is what is the reality. When you are a technical leader, you are talking more in terms of technology, code, data, and systems. But the requirements for executive presence, you need to have a physical presence. You need to have a different perspective, the way that you think, and you must have a business acumen. You must be able to see the wider picture of how your technical expertise connects to the business objectives of the organization. And it requires you to have a completely different perspective. So if you were to look at the three components which I talked about of executive presence, which are important, those are: what are you thinking, what are you saying, and how are you coming across to people. These are the three key components which are relevant and important for you to be able to build a credible or persona or your executive presence if you want to be uh, recognized or be visible to the senior leaders, right? And these three areas, how do you address them? You address them with authority, your 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 way of thinking, your strategic thinking. Communication, strategic communication. Strategic communication is very different from the regular communication that you do, because it needs to have some sort of an impact at the end after you have communicated. And presence, your physical presence is again very, very important. The reason being, people judge you more by the way that you come across, even before you have opened your mouth or even before you have had an opportunity to share with them your thought leadership. So whether we like it or not, your physical presence actually is critical for you to get your foot into the door. So in this, now in the session, I'm going to address each one of these areas one by one to see exactly what happens and how can we address those things. What is it that you can do to overcome those challenges? All right. So any comments, anytime, please feel free to share with me, right? Uh, the triangle. So authority is the first one that we are going to have a look at. And this is about the shift from tactical to a strategic perspective, future orientation. Now, this reminds me of a example of a joke, and I'm sure it's a joke, is about this gentleman who was flying, traveling, and Ratan Tata happens to be sitting next to him, and he was quite, kind of happy that he's sitting with such a renowned personality. And he thought, let me say something important and interesting for me to impress Ratan Tata. And he said, well, you know what? I'm actually thinking of buying a BMW. And Ratan Tata said, oh, really? He said, yeah, even I'm thinking of doing that. It's okay. I'm actually planning to do that in the next 5 to 6 months' times. When are you planning to get your BMW? He asked Ratan Tata. So Ratan Tata says, well, it'll take at least about 5 to 6 years. And this gentleman says, why are you going to take 5 to 6 years' time? So he said, well, because it's a big brand and they are not willing to sell at this time. Now, funny is as it sound, but that is exactly what happens many a times. That's how senior leaders, they view someone who does not have a strategic perspective. They're talking of the same thing, but the way that it is put across can either build or mar your credibility, right? So unless and until you are able to look at that wider organization wide picture, it's not possible for you to be able to communicate at a level that you can engage your stakeholders or uh, uh, key stakeholders or C-suite leaders, right? So business context integration, the one key thing for you to uh, be able to communicate strategically is to be able to put a business context to whatever technical details that you're about to share. And at the same time, be able to balance how much technical details and how much business impact you must be able to, to share. Why? Because remember, most of your business stakeholders, they will have very little or superficial knowledge or information about the technology that you're working. Okay. So what is it that we need to look at? Few have to be able to widen your perspective. Uh, your you must have an clear understanding of exactly what are the objectives of the organization, what is the strategic vision of the organization, and what is the competitive landscape that you are working on. And based on the business objectives and based on the competitive landscape, how does your technical knowledge, how does your technology and domain knowledge can help the organization create a competitive advantage in the market? You need to be able to connect those two together. If at all, it has to make sense to your stakeholders. Okay. And one way to make that shift is instead of looking at how does things work, that is, how does your technology do something, you need to answer the question, why does it matter? Why exactly uh, why exactly do we need to do that in the first place at all? Okay, I'll probably share some examples and that would give you an idea for this. But before that, here is a quote by Professor Ramcharan, and he has written this in his leadership pipeline book, that many middle management leaders, they do not think that they are ready to start thinking in terms of business, or why should they have the business perspective. And what he says is that maturity or your ability to think strategically is not a function of your leadership role. It's not something that you have to postpone until you have got your managing director or a C-suite role. That is being given. Your ability to think strategically is something that you can do at any level. And you need to start preparing yourself for that role much more in advance. This is something, and it is becoming more and more relevant and important in today's world, where organizations are flat, you're working in team structures, and product development is the the way to go forward. I mean, we are moving from a project mindset to a product mindset. The second part is your communication. Executives consume information very, very differently, right? How many times have you had this uh, experience where you started to make a presentation and suddenly one of the senior leaders would just ask you to stop and skip the first few slides and ask you to start from a specific slide, right? Has it happened? Put it in the comment box, and if it's something that has happened to you. Now, why does it happen is simply because you have not been able to structure your communication in a way that puts the most impactful, the most necessary information in the beginning. They already know the details around it, and they know what information that they want from you, and that's the reason they continuously keep asking you to go to a specific slide. You need to be able to tailor your communication based upon your audiences. You remember I was telling you that when you want to teach maths to Ramu, not only should you know maths, you should also know Ramu. So you need to know exactly how does your stakeholder consume information. And that is where your ability to create strategic narratives, your ability to weave a story around your technical details that emotionally appeals and logically also sounds relevant to your stakeholders, if at all they have to, or they need, if they have to take a decision, because at the end of the day they are looking for information from you to make those critical decisions, right? And this is one formula. This is the executive headline formula, which is used by everybody who's successful in strategic communication. This comes from a consulting organization. McKinsey's, they use, I mean, McKinsey's have a complete curriculum for educating their new consultants how to communicate through pyramid principle. So this framework is one example that is being used. And here is the difference in the way that you would probably say something without having a strategic perspective to when it goes to a strategic perspective, right? So we are implementing a new AI strategy. Imagine you are in a lift or an elevator, and the CEO who's traveling with you, he asks you a question about, so what exactly are you doing? So this one way to put it across could be, we are implementing a new AI strategy. But if you have a strategic perspective, this is some way that you can put it across. And that is, our new AI strategy is aiming to reduce cost by 30% within the next 8 months. So reduce the cost by 30%, that is the impact within next 8 months, that's your time frame, while increasing system reliability and directly supporting our operational excellence initiatives. How does it connect to the strategic objective of the organization? This is much more holistic. This is something that a senior executive would expect you to talk, and you can put this whole thing across in less than 30 seconds or maybe a minute or something like that, and he gets a complete picture. Otherwise, just saying we're implementing an AI strategy does not communicate anything much to them. Now, having said that, can you see for yourself that if you have been focusing totally only on your technical details, this information or these details would not be there. But this information is available to all the leaders, and it's possible for you to prepare yourself before you have an opportunity to speak something like that. And there are frameworks where you can have this information at your fingertips. It's not that you would wait for an opportunity to meet a senior leader, but just in case you were to meet someone, what would be something that you can say to come across as credible or strategic, that can have an impact on your career for the long run, right? So this is something that is, we're going to have a look at a couple of techniques. I know that building your executive presence is something that can happen over a period of time, but there is a book by Herminia Ibarra, and she has titled that book, what was that name? I'm forgetting. The name of the book is, yeah, Think Like a Leader. No, sorry. What, I'm not able to get that name, but it Act Like a Leader. Correct. Act like a leader. Think like a leader. Sometimes what happens is that we believe that unless and until I can start thinking like a leader, I cannot speak like a leader. But she says that the way that you change your perspective or change your thinking is first by acting like one. Okay, so I'm saying that executive presence is something that we can build over a period of time, but at the same time, we can start to engage in certain techniques that can help you to start coming across as strategic as you build your presence. Okay, now this is the one which is the third component of executive presence, which is deliberate impression management. Whether we like it or not, people do judge a book by its cover. Whether we like it or not, people judge us even before they know us. I've said this many a times that uh, it takes you 4 years to finish your engineering, and it takes 4 seconds for an interviewer to decide whether you are going to get that job or not, right? So you're going to get that job or not. Is that fair? I don't think so. But is that real? Yes, 100% it is real. So we need to be able to manage those perceptions with our stakeholders while staying authentic. Okay, so your nonverbal communication, your confidence, the way that you come across in these meetings, and the way that you manage your energy, right? Now, imagine you have a very critical project that you are looking to delegate to one of your team members. And that project requires a lot of meticulous planning and looking at things. So, and there are two team members who are, candidate for such a project. One candidate has a messy cubicle, and he's never clean. Things are all over the place. And then there is another one who is meticulous, whose things are always neat and clean and in place, right? Who are you most likely to think of giving that project to out of these two? If you're like me, you probably would want to go for the person who keeps things very neatly, cleanly. Now, does that a clear or a true reflection of how well do you think that person can handle or manage that project? Not necessary. There are people who could look messy, but they seem to have things very clear in their head. And there are some people who are too busy trying to keep things neat and clean, but they spend too much time just doing that, and they might not have that capability to handle it. My point, what I'm trying to make here is that it is not necessary that the way that you come across is the true self that will be seen by the others. So it's important for you to manage those. Sorry, you. This is important for you to manage those impressions, even though you know that that is not right. Okay, so perception is reality. That is something which is important for us to have a look at. This example is from a movie called The Pirates of Caribbean. Sorry, not Pirates of Caribbean, Pirates of Silicon Valley. And this is a story about the rise of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And in that movie, once Apple started to get some traction in the market, and they wanted some funding, Steve Jobs started to go to the banks asking them for money, but he was never given money because of the way that he walked into these banks with no shoes, grown beard and hair, looking more like a hippie. But after some time, somebody said that if you continue to look like this, you will never attract anybody's attention. They will not give you the money. So one day he just changes everything and goes in a smart suit, and he gets the funding. So when his team looks at him and they start to wolf whistle him. So this was what he said. He says, well, if this is what will get them to give me the money, so be it. And the reason I share this example of Steve Jobs is because so many times during sessions, when I talk to people about why is it important for them to come across well in presentations and others, they always try to give me the example of, but look at Steve Jobs. He doesn't wear these shirts. He's not shaven, whatever it is. But that's because he is Steve Jobs. He has built that credibility where his word is much more relevant and important than the way that he looks. But if you don't have that, and that's the reason when Steve Jobs was not the Steve Jobs that the world knew, even he had to go and manage those perceptions. That's the point, right? Now look at some of these examples. There is Nikhil Kamath, there is Mark Zuckerberg, there is Shantanu from, let's say, Bombay Shaving Company, Will Smith. All these people, they are busy building a brand for themselves. They are busy trying to build a personal brand. These are people who have got all the money in the world, but they still feel that they need to manage the perceptions of how they come across. And I think the better example is that of Mark Zuckerberg. He was always seen as nerdy, and his organizations felt that sometimes because of the way that he comes across, that attracts a lot of litigations and others. So they're busy trying to change his persona, and he's trying to build a personal brand of somebody who's friendly and he's fun and adventurous and those kind of things. Nikhil Kamath and the others, they also want to show what kind of a person they are. So the point once again is that you need to build a personal brand. You need to be able to manage those perceptions that people have about you, because that's what makes all the difference. And many times people tell me, why do I need to work on my personal brand? If my work is good and if I'm technically sound, then people should just recognize my work. But unfortunately, if you were to look at Coca-Cola, and this is what the example I like to kind of give Coca-Cola is a more than 100 years old company. Okay. But they still spend money on advertising, because if they do not advertise, if they are not visible to their people, they will be lost. They will go down. And can you imagine, they spend almost 60% of their revenues, and the last 2 years their budget was almost $45 billion just on advertising, just on creating visibility, right? So such an iconic brand, if an iconic brand like Coca-Cola needs to create visibility and manage perception, then I think that's a very strong case for us to think of our personal brand in the same way. Right? So now I want to hear from you. Now, looking at these three things, let's move into a place where we can start to learn certain techniques that can immediately help us to make those perception changes for our stakeholders. What exactly can we do? So one question that I have from you is, what is your single biggest challenge when communicating with executives? Please put it on your comment. What is one challenge that you believe in communicating with executives that you face regularly? It could be anything. Okay. So I'm just assuming that either people are writing or you don't seem to have anything. Okay. Am I saying the right things? Okay. So this is what Aman is saying. Am I saying the right thing or not? Okay, great. Fine. Wonderful. Anybody else? Yeah, sometimes it's important when you, okay, Vaibhav is writing that why would he want to speak with me? Okay, yes. Why would he want to speak with me? Maybe you would want to elaborate a little bit, or why would they think that what I'm saying is relevant and important? Could be that, in case you want to elaborate on it. Venkat, communicate what executive is interested in or looking for. So how do I communicate? How do I know what the executives are interested in or what they are looking for? Okay, right. So great. So these are the few things, as I said, as I've been talking to leaders, these are the few things that keep coming back again and again. These are similar questions that I have. I get from leaders. So let me have a look at few things that I can give you that can be relevant for everyone. Excuse me. Now, this is something that these are the 4 techniques that I'm going to share with you. That is going to be your key takeaway from this session. One is a 30-second opening. How do you make sure that, and this is based on research, that usually when you're talking to strategic leaders or strategic leaders, you have a very small short window of a few seconds or maybe a minute or so uh, to make that impression or to create impact if they have to continue to listen to you. And this is a 30-second opening that I'm going to share with you. Then I'm also going to share with you a listening framework and some technique on how to manage perceptions. Okay, so let's have a look at the first one, which is a 30 seconds opening. And this one again is based on the same framework that I gave an example earlier. That is a SCR framework. The 3 key components of a 30-second opening framework is your strategic context. What is the context in which you are speaking? What is the business impact? And what is the clear request? Okay, so if I were to give an example, this is something. Hi everyone, I wanted to discuss our cloud migration project. We have been working on this for past 6 months now. The team has been putting in extra hours to get everything ready. We have run into some issues with the legacy system integration that's causing delays. I think we need to consider extending our timelines by 3 months and might need additional budget to bring in specialized resources. What do you think? Okay, now this is something that I actually captured in a meeting from a leader that I was working with. Okay, now if you were a business kind of leader, somebody, and looking at it, what is the business impact which is it's having? uh, do you get any information regarding that? I'm not too sure, right? So this is what you need to do. What is, you lead the conversation or you lead your pitch with the strategic context. Okay, what is the, sorry, with the business impact? What is the impact it's going to have in that context? And what is your request? These are the 2 things that you need to work on. Okay, so this could be one way of putting it across, that our cloud migration directly supports our digital transformation strategy. That is the strategic context, and will reduce operational cost by 30%. Okay, that is the business impact. The legacy integration challenges are putting our Q4 launch. This is the complication. This is again the impact that it can have, the risk that it faces. And this is your very specific request. I recommend allocating an additional so and so much funds, for specialized resources to keep us on schedule and preserve our expected ROI. I need your approval today to begin procurement. It also takes almost the same time or probably lesser than what you had mentioned, but it gives a clear picture to your business stakeholders of what is it, what is the challenge, what is the context in terms of how does it relate to the business objectives, and what is the risk, what is the benefit, and then okay, fine, then what do you need from me? So there is a clear request in terms of what exactly is expected. It's not necessary that they will immediately give you something, but they will be able to ask you key questions, relevant questions that can help you to talk and persuade them to do that. So here, if you were to have a conversation that you are taken seriously, this is a good framework to use. This is something that does not require you to do a lot of preparation, but just give it a little thought before you are going into a meeting where you know that you need to make a request like this, and that can be a good way to do that. Okay, so very simple: business context, impact, and your request. Three things. What is the context? Set the context. What is the impact it's going to have? And what is it you are doing? Or, I mean, the risk and benefit. What is the risk of not doing? What is the benefit of doing it? And your clear request. What exactly do you want? All right. Any reactions on this one? Any thoughts on this from anyone? In the meanwhile, I can see that once again, I have seen who's there. Communicate what executives is interested in and looking for. This is something that you had already mentioned. How to not over-explain to convince against a decision made by executives. Sometimes the impact is felt more by teams than executives. Okay, how to not over-explain to convince against decision made by executives. Okay, probably, I will need a little bit more context on that one, Piyush. I think I'm able to understand what you're saying, that the teams, they are impacted more, and who are you thinking of explaining it to the executives or to your team? That's what I'm not very clear about. Okay. All right. So anything else besides that prompts you to say anything about this methodology of using 30 seconds to open your pitch? Okay, maybe later on. So let's just move on. Let me give you a second technique here. Now, this is one technique where I mentioned that many times leaders tell me that when I'm in these meetings, sometimes I don't even know what is it that I can say which sounds intelligent, or what is it I should be asking, because to me, everything that is being said seems quite all right, or I'm just in a learning phase. And it happened with me. So when I started to be in these meetings at some point, I thought that I was just there now and I need some time to learn or some time to find my feet. So I'm just learning. And I got extended for a very long time. But then I realized that the person who had joined with me was also in those meetings, and he always seemed to have the right questions, not only just to create visibility for himself, but the way that he was asking questions was to understand how the other functions work and how that relates to the larger picture. So I happened to ask him once. I said, exactly how do you ask questions? How do you decide what questions to ask? He came from a consulting background and he said, look, this is a simple framework that you can use. Every situation that you are in or anything that is being discussed in meetings, there are only 5 things that you need to be aware of, right? Those are objective. What is the objective that we are trying to achieve? What is a problem in the way? What is a possible solution? What are the alternatives and what are the trade-offs? If you have these 5 things, then you just look for details. Is this clear to me? Is the objective of this meeting, or is the objective is clear to me, or is the problem clear to me, or is the solution clear to me? So like you go through each one of those to see if there is something which is not clear, and that's your opportunity to ask the question, right? This is something so simple that you can start doing tomorrow onwards. So look at exactly what is the objective we are trying to achieve through this meeting. What is the problem? What is the solution that somebody is proposing? Are there any alternatives to it? Or if at all, what are the trade-offs? There is always an opportunity cost. There is always a trade-off between time and money or resources. So what are the trade-offs that we are making? What if we were to look at it alternatively? So that itself will generate a lot of questions for you to be able to ask in the meetings there. Okay. All right. So here is the strategic one. And then this is another technique that you can use. And it is what I call as the so what framework. Many leaders, they fail to have that so what conversation with their strategic leaders. Now, let me give an example. A long time back, I think about 20 years back, I had gone to buy a car. And as I was there at the showroom, this salesperson, he comes and says that you have come just at the right time because now we have got an ERLX engine in our cars. Now, I said, that's great. What does it do? What I was asking him was, that's fantastic that you're talking about technology, but what does that do for me, who is a completely non-technical person? I was basically asking him, so what, right? And he said, oh, sir, you will have a better riding comfort and you will have better mileage. Now that made sense to me. Okay, so this is exactly what happens is that whenever that we are having a conversation with a strategic leader, you need to have that so what. You need to be able to translate that technical detail that you're talking about in terms of the business impact or benefit, and then decide or share in terms of what exactly needs to be done. What can you do about it? Okay, so here's what means the initiative, what exactly the facts. You are stating the facts, you're stating the business context. So what is the importance of this? What is the impact of it? Okay, and what is it that we do now? What are the next steps? So here's an example. Okay, so very short one. We have identified critical security vulnerability. Now, it can probably go a little bit longer if you want to explain exactly what that vulnerability is. But so what? So what means this creates potential regulatory exposure. And if you want to give more details. Now, I recommend reallocating so many dollars from this project to address this immediately, and I provide options for how to approach this without disrupting the current roadmap. This is exactly what a senior executive is looking for. Is it going to have an impact? Okay, what happened? What is the impact on the business? What do you need from me? How much is it going to cost from us? Is it going to have any impact on our current business roadmap as such is concerned? Okay, so these are things that you can do that. So this is very important for you to know and realize that you need to have that so what conversation. And this framework, anytime that you are trying to articulate yourself to the senior leader, think in terms of so what does this mean business wise? What does it mean? What is the impact? Okay, so you can see that we have looked at least about 4 different frameworks so far, and they are all about how to structure your communication based upon the context. If it's a request, if it's an approval, if it's a risk, how do you do that? And these are certain things you would agree with me that this is very easy for you to start using them from tomorrow onwards. It's not something that you would require a lot of practice, but this is something that you can start to do immediately. Okay, let me know any comments. What do you think? How relevant or important it was? Okay, now this is where this is the last part of it. There are certain the technique on physical presence. How do you make sure that you are able to make impact through your physical presence? So many times I have noticed leaders being sloppy with the way that they dress or the way that they groom, right? I've had people, I've seen they've got hair all over the place. And sometimes I think, um, I'm not talking of all, I'm just realizing that many times uh, technical professionals feel that the more haggard look, the more nerdy they come across. This is my personal opinion. I'm sorry, but this is where sometimes they tend to ignore the way that they come across. Okay, and that can work against you if you are going to be an executive, that you need to be able to come across. So first thing that you can start to do is to dress the part. You don't need to be dressed to the T's always with suit and tie and other things, but be make sure that you are, kind of groomed well and clean, and context wise you are correct in wearing the kind of clothes. Couple of things that you can do is the way that you speak or the way that you occupy a space. Sometimes we tend to make ourselves small when it comes to sitting in the presence of many senior leaders. That will not work in your favor. So you should be sitting up straight with your chin up, and kind of put your arms on the side. Even if you are feeling fear or not so comfortable, intimidated, but the way that you sit can make all the difference, right? Somebody had mentioned to me that, do you know what is the difference between you walking into a room and either you being noticed or you not being noticed? I said, what is that? He says, a difference of 2 millimeters. And what is that difference of 2 millimeters? And he said, just your chin up. If you walk into a room with your chin up, you get noticed because of the confidence that you exude, even if you're not feeling confident. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do. Voice modulation, uh, voice modulation, and the pace of speech. If you were to speak rapidly, you don't come across as somebody with presence. You will notice that all the senior leaders or those people who come across as having power or come across as somebody who has got presence, they speak very with an even pace. They speak in a very deliberate and intentional pace. So this is also something that you can do, is become very intentional. When you have these frameworks in your mind and you said, okay, fine, what am I going to say? What, so what, now what? And then become intentional about it. And then you articulate yourself in a slow pace. Okay, this is something that you can also do immediately. This will require a little bit of practice. So my suggestion to you is, try to take one framework and use that within your team in a safe place where you know that, even if, low stakes environment where you know that even if you were to make a mistake, you can get away with it. So that is something that you do, and you are able to practice it. And then when you are going for these meetings, maybe you can start using those. Okay, so please let me know, what do you think of some of these techniques that I'm talking about here? How important or relevant do you find them? I have some uh, comments here, please. Anybody? Okay. Any thoughts? No thoughts? Okay. Sure. Not a problem. Maybe if you're just still writing, and if I see comments coming in, I will have a chat, or I will do that with you later. Okay, now this is what is relevant and important for us. There is always a knowing doing gap. What I have shared with you probably was something that is not new to you. It's not rocket science. It is very simple techniques. Yeah, some of it could be new, but most of the things that I'm talking about are not rocket science. They're not something which we don't know about. But why is it that we know these things and we don't practice it? Now, some of you who are here, I can see, you must have received the ebook that I have shared with you sometime in the past. How many of you can seriously tell me if you have gone through the four frameworks that I have I have shared in that ebook with you? Or how many of you even click the link on the videos that I have shared with you? That's the problem, that we seem to get carried away with our business as usual. That is not something that, it's one thing to know and it's one thing to be able to do it. Okay, so there is a Chinese proverb which says that to know and not to do is not yet to know, and that's the problem. So these frameworks, they can be useful if you were to use them. They are not going to be useful if you don't use them. And this is where the challenge of making that a habit becomes a problem. Okay, this is where your ability to work with somebody who can give you regular feedback or make sure that you are on track doing what you are expected to do becomes very important. I've always given the example of um, a personal trainer in a gym, right? Because you don't hire a personal trainer to delegate your push-ups to them. You hire a personal trainer because you are holding yourself accountable, because you know that you will show up, because whatever that person says that you are going to do, that you are trying to keep yourself on track. Okay, so it's important for you to be able to do that. I have got examples here where leaders have come to me and they have told me about what their problem is. One such example was that of a leader who was constantly uh, delivering lots more information instead of insights. So we created a plan for him. I shared certain framework with him, and I made, we made sure that he goes and practices those for about a week, and come back and tell us exactly where he was having a challenge. What is it what is it that he's able to do well, and what is it that needs a little bit more improvement? It is not important of what were the frameworks he was using or how he was using. The fact that we were meeting week after week to make sure that he keeps on track, that was what made possible for him to start practicing those frameworks. Okay, so we all get quite busy in what we do. So it's important for you to be able uh, to put in the discipline of doing things, to be able to work on what you have decided to work on. You need to first be able to do that. Now, here is one example that I can not example. I just saw a video recently by Indira Nandi, and she talks about that. She said that earlier it used to be that we must brief the top and we must train the bottom. But today, the way things are changing in the market, the amount of uncertainty which surrounds everything that we do in this VUCA environment, it's become important for us to be able to train the top as well, because we are facing and handling too many new things, and it's important for us to be able to get ourselves into a new way of working, and that can be done only by doing it. So many times what happens is that as senior leaders, we find difficult to accept that fact that I need some help. I don't have the courage to accept that fact. What will people think if I have to be able to, if I have to be told how to do things, right? So Marshall Smith says that three things which are important for you to make that successful transition is three. One is courage. Second is humility. third is discipline. Have the courage to accept that fact that yes, you need to do things differently because of the changing environment. It's not about that you don't know things after so many years of experience. There's something new for us to learn every single day. Have the humility when you do make mistakes. Then when somebody gives you a feedback on saying that this is what needs to change or this is what you can do, then you need to make sure that have the humility to accept it and move to use that feedback as an opportunity to make that change. Okay. And continue to practice it over a period of time. Hold yourself accountable and make sure that you work on that. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, he talks about it is not the quantity but the consistency which is important. For us to be able to make that change, I can give you millions of frameworks, but if you don't use them, that is not going to be relevant and important. So this is where I'm talking about that it's important for you to be able to do that. Okay. For you to be able to move to a strategic advisor role, there are certain practices, and they can be very different for different people. But the objective is the same. How can you move to a more strategic mindset or perspective where people see you as a strategic leader? Okay. And one of the things that I have always mentioned is that if you are a technical professional, and if people think of you only when they need some things fixing as a technical professional, then they will never think of you when there's a time when they need somebody to put their vision into shape, right? The difference is between that of a plumber and an architect. If people see you as a plumber, they will only come to you when they need things fixed. And if they see you as an architect, that's the only time that you get invited to on the strategic table where they want to shape their vision for the organization or the next steps for the organization, right? So very important for you to be able to put these things in practice: courage, humility, and discipline. So this is a program. Now, I know I can see who all are there in this kind of session at this moment. I started working with individual leaders about 8 months back. And one of the reasons I had started working with them was to understand outside the corporate world, how are things changing? And I was talking a lot to leaders about the way our market is changing from a project mindset to a product mindset. And I was finding it difficult to wrap my head around it myself. I was coaching certain startup founders, and I found that I was not able to connect with them simply because I was also trained or worked only with leaders who were in the project mindset. Okay. So I said, unless and until I'm able to make that shift myself, it's not going to be easy for me to help anybody make that shift, strategic shift. So that's how I started to work with individual leaders about 8 months back. And I literally have spoken to almost about 130 or 135 leaders in the last 6 months. And I found out exactly what their pain points are. Okay. And some of you who are there in this program, then you know exactly what is it that I offered and what is it that we are working with. But what I realized is that the market is very, very different, and the way it's going to work will be very different. And this key insight came to me after I saw Indra Nooyi's video, which talks about that it's not only about coaching or talking to people, it's a lot to do with practice also, and it requires a completely different framework of working together. And that's the reason I decided to put this program together, which can help you to move if you are also in that place where you know things, but we are not able to move forward because we are not putting that into practice. Okay. So elevating your executive presence, bridging the gap from a functional to a strategic leader, is an 8-week beta program that I have put together. And this is going to be hosted on our community, my community called the Gravitas, Rajiv Gravitas Mastermind. And what is different about this program is that it's going to have monthly master classes. It will have co-working sessions. If you are finding it difficult to do things on your own, then there's an opportunity for us to sit down together when you come to the problem and we work through that together. Every week there will be co-working sessions. These will be group sessions of 3 to 4, 5 people each, where we work with those challenges together. If you feel that this is something that you cannot discuss that in a group, something that needs to be discussed personally, then I will open up certain hours every week for you to have a chat with me one-on-one. So you will have one-on-one support as well. I'll be uploading a lot of tools, templates, and resources and strategic frameworks that will be available to you throughout. This another part is the community of peers. So far, whoever that I've been working with them individually to lead them and me. Here, I would like to bring this community together where there are people who are grappling with the challenges, they have the same aspirations, and they have the same opportunities. Okay, and this is where you can learn from each other. So this is something that I'm offering in this particular program called Elevating Your Executive Presence, Bridging the Gap. What can you expect? What are some of the things that you can get from this? This is the online community, which is just I talked about. I have blocked calendar for these days or certain days in the week where we can have co-working sessions, Q&A sessions, and one-on-one coaching sessions. So Q&A sessions are basically a weekly where you can either send me your questions or you can join the call and ask those questions. And I would either prepare myself or maybe I can answer them impromptu while we are in those sessions. Okay. Here is, I'm going to share the link with you to join the Gravitas Mastermind community. This is going to be a paid community very soon, but this time, whoever is there on this call, it's free for them. And this is going to remain free only until 5th of April. After that, this is going to be on a waiting list. I'm going to, so this is by invitation only. Those people we feel and believe that are the right fit for the community is something that we would work on. So it's going to grow organically. We are not looking for too many people in this, but the right kind of people. Okay. Sorry. So this is this, I think there is a mistake. It's not 1999, it is 999. So this early beta program I'm offering at 7,450, which will have annual membership of this community, plus all the masterclass that you can get, plus the time that you can have with me every week. For 8 weeks, you'll be working with me together. As I said, it's for some of you who know how much how much are the charges for the coaching that I'm talking about. Realize that this is something which is just a throwaway. It's a giveaway, simply because this is in a beta program, never going to be offered at the same price. So you can scan this QR code to get more details about the program, what it entails, and you will also find a payment link in that one if you feel inspired and interested enough, because this is a great opportunity for you to secure a place for yourself, at this price, right? And as we move forward, and more than the investment is the amount of time that you can get from me. So this is a different format I'm offering at this moment. So let me know if you feel that this is something that could be of interest to you. All right. Any questions that you may have, I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. So unfortunately, this is a live stream and I cannot open it. Next time, I'm going to use what is called the on-air format, where you can unmute yourself and able to talk. But if you have any questions, happy to answer them. Can I have any questions which are there in the comments box? Okay. I think I missed this point from Weber. He says, how do we bring this to action? We learn about a lot of frameworks, but not consistent. Okay, so I hope you got your answer from that, Weber, that it's about being able to use them consistently. And I have mentioned that this is not a challenge which you individually probably face. Most of us have our priorities for the day, and unless and until we intentionally make room for that in our calendar, it's not easy for us to make that shift. And that is the reason you always work with somebody that you can hold yourself accountable to. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to think in terms of, if you would like to work with me or find somebody who you can hold accountable to. Okay. It varies from situation to situation when you are presenting something versus when you're sitting in a decision-making setup. Okay, I think I missed that part. What was it regarding? Maybe you can give me some insight again. Otherwise, um, I think I lost that somewhere. When you're sitting, it varies from situation to situation. Okay, let me have a look at what Venkat said. Voice modulation always keeps attention from participants. Keeps attention from participants or keeps participants' attention. What would that be? I think I'm just assuming that you're saying that voice modulation always helps you to keep the attention of participants, and that is true. There is one guy on YouTube where he talks about how you can use your voice presentation skills. And he gives a very good example. He said that when he was learning this trade, he was, his coach brought him into a room and he was sitting in front of a piano and he's just pushing one single key. He says most people communicate just by using one tonality in their voice, whereas they could use so many different keys to create that modulation and inflection that can keep the attention. If you were to just keep putting one key, it is not going to create music, and that is true. And so he says that you should have a whole range of voice modulation to be able to keep people's attention. Okay, right. So, okay, it was around applying the 30-second opening framework. Yes, okay. Yes, that's right. So, as I said, there are multiple frameworks. Uh, Here, the context was more for strategic leaders, and that is the reason I said that when you specifically you want to make a point to a senior leader in 30 seconds, that's when you use a particular framework like this. If you are sitting in a meeting, then you may want to use a different framework because there is a particular request also. In a 30-second opening framework, there is no request. It's basically you are giving them a summary, executive summary of what you want to say. Okay, so yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, thank you very much. So, wonderful. Thank you very much. I see there are no questions in this moment. Uh, anyway, you all have my contact details, and if you have taken, let me just give you that scanner again. You can find the details. Even if you were not to sign up on this, if you are able to just use some of these frameworks, I can promise you that it will definitely make a huge difference. And specifically for Webhub, yeah, I think it's consciously trying to put these frameworks in practice. Look at one framework per week and make sure that you keep that in front of you in the morning before you start your day and say, let me find an opportunity to put this framework to use. And your first win can make all the difference. The minute you are able to put the framework to use and you are able to get a win out of that, that itself will be a big motivator for you to continue to doing that later on. And I would highly again recommend reading this book called the atomic habits, which I have always recommended. It's all about consistency. How consistent you are will always help you to get into a new habit rather than how much do you do that in one go. All right. So that was my last bit, that if you want to make sure these frameworks are useful to you, become consistent. So with that, let me just call it a day here. Thank you very much for joining for this broadcast. We had some technical difficulty. I think we lost quite a few people in this broadcast earlier. I'm sorry about that. You know what? This is also something new that I'm trying. I hope you will forgive me for that. And probably the next time it is going to be better. So thank you very much. And I will see you again soon. Bye bye.